What if I told you there was a way to guarantee your family and your loved ones a future free of financial uncertainty when you pass away? On this episode, we are going over how you can create a plan to protect your family's financial destiny. Hello, and welcome back to the Happy House Hacking Podcast, the podcast designed to help young people in California navigate the path to happy home ownership. I am your host, Owen Schwaegerle. I am a realtor, investor, and happy house hacker. And on today's episode, we have estate planning attorney Matt O'Leary, and we're going to have a conversation about how to secure your legacy and the financial security of your loved ones in the future. So, Matt, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and what you do.
Owen, thanks for having me on. Yeah, I'm Matt O'Leary. I am one half of the lawyers at the law firm of O'Leary Wallace. I've been an estate planning attorney since 2010. Love helping people plan and be strategic about their present and their future. Try to make sure that they're planned both for the good times and then in the eventual harder times, they're as prepared and can have as much control as they can. But I live here in beautiful San Luis Obispo with my lovely wife, Stacy, and our 4 kids.
Awesome. So, Matt, how did you choose the type of law that you practice?
That's a good question. It's not a practice area that a lot of people go to law school thinking I'm going to go into estate planning or I'm going to go into business and real estate creation law. But I had my father has a construction company. And so the swinging the hammer side didn't appeal to me as much as the business management side. And he was involved in a lawsuit when I was in college. And that helped kind of steal my idea that someday I'm going to go to law school and try to be as good as I can for the folks like him that are small business owners, that are small families, that are, involved in real estate, et cetera.
Wow. Okay. So it was kind of the family experience, maybe in the not best sort of situation.
Yeah.
That got you interested in law.
Yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of times when the lawyers get involved, it's not always the best case situation. But that's why I like what I do, because I feel like it's a prophylactic version of that, so that we're dealing with the problems before they ever arise and trying to minimize them as much as we can.
Got it. Okay. So our audience, our listeners, a lot of young people, a lot of people starting out wanting to invest in real estate, buy their first home. Why should somebody even consider asset protection? And what even is asset protection? And what are the benefits to someone buying property?
Yeah, sure. Well, everybody wants the silver bullet to have just the ultimate perfect asset protection. I can do anything I want. No one can ever sue me. And that's never true. But there are some really clear, simple steps that people can take to make sure that they're as prepared as they can be. So, there's twofold planning. There's the planning for the liability and the asset protection now, and there's the planning for what if health changes, someone passes away, birth, divorce, whatever it might be, incapacity. What plan can we do now to protect the asset in that situation? And some of those things are eventualities. They're not maybes. Someone will pass away eventually. So there's some basic clear steps. For your house in California, the good news is if it's your personal residence, you do have a $600,000 homestead exemption. So you will have asset protection in the amount of $600,000 on your personal residence. So that's going to happen no matter what. But some next steps that you can take are to make sure that that house is held in trust. That won't make it impervious to anything to ever happen, but that will absolutely set up a plan so that if something happens to you, you have a succession, you have somebody who could step in and help you. And then if it's a secondary property, or if it's a rental property, if it's a property that you're going to buy with someone else, there's some other steps you can do. Create an entity, create a separate trust, some basic things that all plan for, okay, we're going into this deal together. How are we going to look at this if something happens, if there's suddenly the good times become more difficult times?
Okay. So let's say I'm a first-time home buyer. I'm someone who's like trying to buy my first property, and why should I care like about that? Why does that matter? I mean, I'm just starting out. I've got a long life ahead of me. You know, I don't need to worry about that till many, many decades down the road. I just want to buy this house and house hack it, or just start out my life. Why do I need to think about estate planning?
While you're young, you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it is hard to picture you as a first-time home buyer because you've bought so many properties. But why? Well, that's a good question. And it is, everybody is always thinking it's not them until it's them. Mm-hmm. So it's a low barrier to entry. There's a little bit of a cost. There's some time spent with an attorney, which is terrible. Obviously, you don't want to have to spend any time with an attorney if you can help it. But you meet with your attorney. You have a pleasant conversation. You create something that, you pay for on the front end, but the end result is something that no matter what will save you and your family eventually. So it might not be value that you see for a really long time, but it's a relatively small time and expense cost that correlates to a guarantee of an eventual benefit that even if you don't see, your family would see. So it's an opportunity for you to take control of any type of hypothetical bad situation that could happen in the future. Take back that control now while you can, and ensure that even in a bad time, the best case possible is going to happen. Mm-hmm.
So tell us, like, what happens if you die and you have property, but you didn't have that estate plan set up?
Yeah. If you don't have any plan at all, any real estate in California that's worth more than $50,000, which is virtually all real estate, if it's more than $50,000, it'll have to go through a court proceeding. And there are some summary court proceedings, but in general, it will have to go through a full probate where a court has to get involved. A court has to get into your private personal affairs. A court has to tie it all up so that nobody can really do anything with it. And maybe it could be sold in the court proceeding, but you can't do anything productive with the proceeds. They have to stay in court. And you have to go through this arduous process, which is there for a reason. It can be a process that's there to try to make sure that things go right. But in the end, you will have spent a year and a half of your family's life waiting for this property to get cleared up in court so that it can then go to whoever the successor is that is in your life, whether that's your spouse, whether that's your kids, whether that's your parents or your siblings, whoever those people are for you. It's going to take that entire court process before that's clear and can pass to them. So that process is expensive. If it's just a good old normal house here in San Luis Obispo County and it's worth $750,000, that process is going to be, and that's gross value. Let's say you had a large mortgage. It's still going to be like $20,000 to the attorney to just probate that, $20,000 to the personal representative who handles it, $4,000 to $6,000 of court costs. So you're looking at a $40,000, $50,000+ expense and a year and a half of delay just to get access to your property. So there's good reasons to try to avoid that.
Wow. Yeah, that's gnarly. Can you share a story of maybe something where it went totally wrong? Like a family had the worst probate or some kind of thing to show like what could happen? What are the possibilities?
Oof. Yeah, sure. And obviously when we get involved it maybe has already gone wrong. So we see more of the horror stories than the happy, easy situation. So I probably have a disproportionate number of horror stories. So I'm sure there's times where it goes great, but we're in a current situation right now. Since we're talking about, real estate and personal residence issues, we're in a situation right now where I represent two brothers. There's a third brother, and dad never did a trust. Dad did a will 30 years before that he probably didn't mean anymore, but he never updated it. And he left it to his the three sons in equal shares. And each one are supposed to get a third of my house. And then he didn't put it in trust, so it would have to go through a court proceeding. And then he named one of the sons who was not fit to have the job. All the problems you could have, this guy had some of them. Like substance abuse, rough family situation, insolvency, all these problems, unfortunately, this guy has. So he named that guy anyway and never updated it. We went into a probate proceeding. The person that he named lived in the house, wouldn't move out, wouldn't sell it, wouldn't follow court orders. We had to get a court order to remove him. My clients then had to get a court order to force the sale. They then had to sell it in a probate, which is, as you know, can be more of a fire sale. You can't spend the time and invest and get the property in its best condition. You have to kind of sell it as is. So it was a long, slow process, and it's cost tens of thousands of dollars and will still cost tens of thousands of dollars more. And had it been in trust, had they named an appropriate person to handle that trust, gosh, this would have been, even if it was protracted, it would have been a year. And even if it was extra expensive, it would have been $5,000, $10,000, maybe $15,000. And instead, the gentleman passed away at the very end of 2019. So we're going into the fifth year here, and it's cost tens and tens of thousands of dollars. All that could have been avoided with some estate planning.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. I think of some of the clients we're working with or have worked with in the past, and there's one family where the dad refused to set up an estate with a trust as well. He thought, I've got a will. And then, at this point he had remarried. And so there's a new wife, new family. Sure. And then he has his children that, would be getting a share of it. It's supposed to go 50% to his kids, 50% to his new wife. But the new wife didn't want the kids to get anything. And so they've been dragging it out for years now. It's probably going on 2-3 years where they haven't been able to sell it. And it's still going through probate. Attorneys are involved. And it's just the angst and just the time that they are spending on this. It's cost them more than just financial. It's emotional. It's been a roller coaster. And so fortunately, we're finally getting to a point where we may be able to help them get that one on the market and sell it. Then on the flip side, a positive story, one of our other clients, she was, her father passed away and had 3 properties that were in a trust. And she was named the executor of the trust. And within 2 months of her father's passing, she had the ability to get the properties ready for sale. We listed all 3 of them, and we were able to sell them within 6 months of him passing.
Wow.
They were able to be totally done with it, liquidate all the estate, and they could move on because that father had thought ahead and he had planned for the future and gave his children and his grandchildren the ability to access those funds and liquidate that property quickly.
It's a gift to your family to do the proper planning like that. And naming the right person. He named his daughter to handle it. She was the trustee. Obviously, she was equipped to do it. She went to the right professionals to help. It's just a different thing it's a total gift to your family when you take the time to think about it and actually put that plan into place.
Yeah. So Matt, what is a full estate plan? Because obviously there's just your assets, there's naming who gets what. That's part of like an estate plan. But what does like a full estate plan look like?
Yeah, great question. And that's what we usually tell folks who don't have anything. We talk like any estate planning documents in place. We talk to them about the process, and usually we say, okay, we do complete estate plans, holistic estate plans that try to deal with all the parts of your life, not just one little segment. So if you own real estate in California, you probably are a good candidate to have a trust. So you would probably have a trust. Even if you have a trust, and let's say you're doing a joint plan with someone else, your spouse, you'd probably still have wills that say, leave everything to my trust if I'm not there. So even though you have a trust, you still have wills. You would have a healthcare directive. And even when you're young and healthy, you do a document that says that my significant other or my family member or whomever can step into your shoes and speak for you, get records. It makes important decisions so that they don't have to guess about things that you wanted. You would have a power of attorney which is a financial document that says that my agent can step into my shoes and do financial transactions. That document sometimes seems like superfluous since I already have a trust. Why do I need a power of attorney? But that document's really important because you always will still have personal financial transactions that you have to deal with. Things like credit cards or retirement accounts, bank accounts that are still in your name. So that's a really important document. And then if you have young children, and I know you do, having a nomination of a guardian that if something happened to me, who would step in and be the parent substitute, who would make the decisions about what pediatrician we go to and what school they go to, where they live. And then who would make sure that they're not just given money at a young age and said, okay, good luck. I hope you don't blow it. Naming those folks, super, super important. So a complete estate plan would have those 4 or 5 core documents. And then there's a whole bunch of other documents that could fit in to fill in the gaps, to put those documents into place to make sure they're all effective. But those are the primary ones when I talk to somebody about a complete estate plan.
So what do you do if you are on board with setting up an estate plan, but your partner isn't ready to do that yet?
Yeah. And that's true in like almost 100% of the time. One partner is just locked in, so important to them. And then the other one is just kind of along for the ride. And that's okay. I had a colleague mentor talk about, well, I'm a futurist. I'm somebody who looks ahead and casts vision. Of course, I think about things like our estate plan. And the other partner was very analytical, but they were more like in the moment. And it just thinking about that long-term thing just wasn't important to her. So how do you get them along? Well, it is a joint process. But you want to try to find someone, a professional, someone who's going to help you, that's going to make it as tolerable as it can be. You want it to be kind of and it's almost like a fun experience. You can have you have some laughs about it, but you just think about these tough possible eventualities, but you think about them in kind of a lighthearted way, and it takes some of the sting out of it. And one of you can be more of the driving force of getting it all done. But some of the things we do to try to make it manageable for the other person that doesn't care as much, we have a worksheet that you can take home and do it at home so that when the moment's right, when you're at the kitchen table, you can answer some of those things. Or maybe one of you is burdened with answering those things. But when you come together, you both sit in the appointment and the attorney reviews the materials with you. And now all of a sudden it feels a little bit more real. And maybe the partner that wasn't as interested is now suddenly a little bit more invested. We try to do it also so that we have a review, and then we are already scheduled your next appointment to come back and sign. And so now you're under the gun a little bit. And so once you're already in motion, you're staying in motion. And that's probably the third thing we do to get people focused enough to at least just deal with it. And then once you've dealt with it, you realize like, A, it wasn't that scary, but that B, you've dealt with it. You don't have to think about it again if you don't want to. You can just go up on the shelf. It's a good idea to think about it again, but it can go up on the shelf and you're going to be protected at the bare minimum. You're going to be protected from some of these bad things.
Oh, that's awesome. So what happens to your debt when you die? I heard recently from someone who said, hey, when you die and you have credit card debt, it just goes away. What happens?
Yeah, well, there's a classic thing of like, I'm worth more dead than alive,
right?
Which is definitely true for me. The life insurance that hopefully everyone here has. But no, so a debt goes with the person, the estate. It does. So if you have someone who has more debt than assets, then they don't need to pay any debt past what the assets were. So if I had $100 in the bank and I had $1,000 in debts and I died, the people that was owed $1,000, tough luck, all you're getting is $100. Mm-hmm. So it goes with the person's estate who passed away. So that doesn't, credit cards, for example, even if you're married to the person, they will say, if I passed away, they would call and say, okay, pay SEO is, $5,000. And if my spouse said, sorry, I'm not ever going to pay you, but she inherited from me assets, hypothetically, the credit card company gets to sue her and say, hey, you inherited more than $5,000 and you never paid us. We're supposed to be paid first. Now, in practice, does that happen? Of course not. They don't run around suing people for $5,000, but they do go at the top of the pile, actually, before anybody receives assets. There are certain assets that are exempt from that. So if you had joint tenancy real estate, it would just pass to your spouse and they don't have to pay the credit card. If you have a retirement account with beneficiary designated, that's not going to go to creditors. But the other things, they would. At least they hypothetically would. In a trust administration, there's a lot more flexibility because there's less of a target for the person who's the debtor to go out, the creditor to go after. In a probate, all the creditor has to do is file a document, and now they have to be paid so long as there's any assets. So it's another reason to have a trust.
Got it. So are there any other things you could share with someone who's on the fence, thinking about it, like, oh, I don't need this. This isn't for me today. Maybe down the line, why would they consider setting up a full estate plan?
Well, it's if it's not something that has value to you or meaning to you, if you said, hey, I don't really care what happens to my stuff if something happens to me, let my family sort it out. Let them deal with those problems. I'm not going to take care of them now. It'll be their problem and they can take care of it then. All I can say in that case is, well, okay, good luck. And I hope nothing bad happens and, be prudent, please. So, if someone said, I don't care about the mess that's left, if anything happens, okay, then that's a perspective. Some people will say things like, well, I won't be around to see it. I don't care. And I have, some respect, I guess, from somebody who says, I'm not going to think about it ever, and it's their problem and they deal with it. And I'm going to live that principle. But most of us don't feel like that. Obviously, most of us care about our loved ones. Most of us care about not leaving a big problem behind. Most of us think, I want this to be smooth and positive for people if something terrible happened, like I died unexpectedly. So if you look around and you think, gosh, do I want them to have, an easier experience? And if that answer is yes, if I want them to save money if something happened to me, do I want them to be able to jump in and help me if something happened to me? And all in a way that doesn't cost tens of thousands of dollars and avoid court proceedings. If that matters to you, then you should definitely take care of an estate plan, even if it feels very unlikely that that's going to be you. But if you don't care at all, then I guess, don't do one. But it's a relatively low, bar. Like you don't have to do a whole lot to make sure that you have a good estate plan.
Yeah. One of our founding fathers said there's two things that are inevitable: death and taxes. And so if you want to prepare your family and set them up for a great financial future where they don't have to go through the stress, headache, and hassle, we encourage you to consider setting up a full estate plan. That way you're protected, your family's protected, and everyone knows what to expect at that time, which will come for all of us someday. So Matt, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And if any of you would like to connect with Matt and set up a full estate plan, his contact information is in the notes on this episode, and we can get you in touch as well. We'd be happy to do an introduction. And as always, if you're looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate, contact us at the Schwaegerle team. We'd love to help you on that real estate journey. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.